Josh Dobbin.
So, before I begin, I would like to point out that there is a line, a natural break in the brick, bisecting the S in persuasive speech and making it sort of a Kesha effect, turning it into a dollar sign and making the persuasive speech have a meaning that becomes sort of fuddled, at least to my mental apparatus. But I did not come here to speak of such things. I came here to speak of love. And my tale begins with another such aphorism, and it is this: fortune favors the bold. We've heard this before. It goes back to antiquity. I believe Virgil in the Aeneid said it at some point, and even he, when he did, it was probably a cliche then, because it's true. Fortune favors the bold. The opposite is also true as a corollary. Fortune favors the bold, but fortune despises the shit out of the weak and the cowardly. And fortune does horrible things to them. Fortune knocks their books out of their hands and takes kick-me signs to their ass and gives them wedgies. And I know this is the case because my tale begins at such a place of cowardness and cravenness. And thankfully, it does not end there. And hopefully, in the distance between there and here, there'll be some sort of bend of a narrative arc, and y'all will enjoy it. High school. I enter high school, and a younger, sort of more fresher face, thinner, cooler-looking version of what stands before you now. And that young me had a big premium placed on the idea of braveness, being stand-up. I grew up in a variety of little rural towns as the only Jew, so I learned how to fight a lot. To convince the various kids in the various places that we're all not Woody Allen. Some of us can throw down. And braveness, as I came to find out, is not fungible. It's not a liquid asset that you could sort of move from account to account. I walk into a classroom, and that 15-year-old me along the timeline there is suddenly hit in the gut with this feeling. The air is sucked out of the room. I'm in the presence of someone who, if you asked him back there, pre-me, Josh Dobbin, what he felt, he would say love, because his voice was like that. He would be wrong. What he was feeling would be a crush. However, when we use the word crush, and when I use the word crush as a 39-year-old man, it sounds dismissive. It sounds as, it's a schoolboy crush. Oh, it's just a crush. And that forgets the reality, what that crush feels like to the person being crushed. It's a heaviness. It's a weight. It's a mass, and it pushes inexorably down and takes the breath out of you, and it's exquisite, and it's painful, and it's painfully exquisite. It's a million different things, and all I knew is that for all of my bravery, when I sat next to this girl, my gut twisted around my spine, and I felt like I wanted to barf and puke at the same time and poop. And none of that was romantic. But I had this premium placed upon me. Bravery. You have to be brave. You have to be stand up. Fortune favors the bold. Do something. And although I had garnered a sort of reputation as being able to speak freely and not being afraid to fight with authority or other people or what have you, and being able to be funny and this and that, I couldn't say 6 words to this girl. So I decided I should say words in her general sort of blast radius. It was my cowardly intention to be cool in an area of effect around her for you D&D nerds out there. And I don't know exactly what my plan was. Years later, I would see a South Park episode that involved something called Underpants Gnomes. And the Underpants Gnomes had a plan, a 3-part plan. Part 1, steal underpants. Part 2, question mark. They hadn't figured it out, really. But part 3, profit. So I had my first part, and it was hazy, and I figured love was at the end of this. And it didn't work out. I didn't know if she was noticing me trying to make her notice me, and I couldn't look at her. or say hello to her. And I grew to despise myself for this weakness. And I found out that she was working at a Dunkin' Donuts. And this is the sort of days of Dunkin' Donuts. This is like 1989-ish Dunkin' Donuts, back when you could actually dunk the donuts. They gave you that's where the name comes from, by the way. So I didn't have a car. I wasn't even 16 yet. And so I had a 10-speed bike. What's cooler than that? Pedaling my way to life. I figured perhaps it's school. It's school that's kind of quashing my bravery, that out there in the world where the rules are different, I could be the me that I know that I am in front of and actually to her, right? Change the context. And with each pedal push, it was about 4 or 5 miles from my house to this Dunkin' Donuts. I would go there, and there are things you could do as a 15-year-old, which are okay, but if you do them older, you're a stalker, and it's bad. And it's creepy and restraining ordery. At the time, so I would go, and I would have these mental dress rehearsals where I would pick up some sort of little S thing, and I would think something will be there at Dunkin' Donuts, and there will be a conversation that occurs, and it will just naturally, organically go, and then boom, I'll be clever, and everything will be wonderful, and question, profit, love. And I would get there, and I would not make eye contact. I would mumble an order for a Diet Pepsi, and I would slink out hating myself. And I would drink that. And Diet Pepsi from the tap is awful. It has this tinny, terrible taste, like pennies in your mouth. And I would I would ride all those miles back to my house thinking, what are you doing? This entire drama exists only in your head and in your gut that's wrapped around your spine. But really, there's no story here. This is all just you. You're a closed loop. Do something. Fortune favors the bold. Be bold. Be that guy. I would go out again. I guess she thought I lived close by. And again, and again, and again. And each day, I don't even like donuts. I didn't like Dunkin' Donuts. Even the bagels sort of taste vaguely of that like proto-donut form. Ugh. So I would just get my diet soda. And I got to the point where it became like my job. I would pray that I would get somebody else online so I would be sort of excused of the obligation to try and fail yet again. And so with each failure, it grows and becomes bigger, this sort of mental obsession. I feel this thing. I have to act. I have to do something. I have to be bold. And it got to the point where the chains of cowardice that I had lashed about myself began to become heavier than the weight of the crush. And I figured, well, okay, when this equilibrium point hits, it will just be more sense logically. Just say something and forget about even the idea of being rejected. I'll be done with hating myself for not being able to move and say and do. And as I made that resolution and said that as I was driving, that's when I got hit by a car. And I got hit. I mean, it was an impact. And an amazing thing happened when I got hit by that car. There's this phrase, everybody's sort of familiar with this, the idea of a million monkeys banging on a million typewriters for a million years. They're going to eventually pump out the works of Shakespeare. But eventually is the thing, is that given an infinite amount of odds, you can arrive at something absolutely unlikely. Well, through whatever confluence of angles and geometry and luck and happenstance, what happened, my 10-speed bike, it was this touring bike that the front wheel had a quick release, so you could take it off, and if you're like a European guy who biked to work, you would take your wheel into work so no one would steal your bike, because that's what Europeans do. So when I got hit, it activated the quick release, and the front wheel flew off, and that pushed it down, and I ended up flying over in this kind of like Xbox ragdoll physics way. I hit the guy's windshield and tumbled up like shogi and pray for death and just landed on my feet. And then because of that, I fell back on my ass. But for a moment, I was on my feet. And I got up, and I'm patting myself. This guy stops his car, and he gets out. He's terrified. He's just hit a kid on a bike. This is gonna change his life. And he's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I do what you did in the movies. I think I'm okay. And I'm aware in this moment that I've heard these stories, like, and you walk 10 steps and boom, you fall over dead. I was fine. I was not hurt in the slightest. I didn't have a scratch. I was invincible. I was possessed with a strength and a power of conviction. Now I'm going to get real geeky on y'all. You're some NPR folks, so you've read some books. These are comic books. There's a 1950s, early 60s series in DC called The Challengers of the Unknown. They had no superpowers. They were just some dudes who were on a plane, and the plane crashed, and they didn't die, so they said, hey, death spared us. Let's go on adventures, right? I said, I am a challenger of the unknown. Death has spared me. It now behooves me. I can walk away from this. What is going up to a girl in a high school class and saying, hey, you want to go to a movie? Pfft, that's really easy. And I couldn't drive my bike because it was all wobbly, so I had to walk the next, 3/4 of a mile. And as it turns out, that's the exact distance at which that Popeye strength kind of sapped down and the adrenaline left my body. And I was just a kind of quivery mess, both from the near-death experience and the sort of psychic death of this Dunkin' Donuts that I have come to view as a daily ritual of self-flagellation. And I stood I remember it said, no shirt, no shoes, no service. I had a shirt, I had shoes, I had no courage. I walked in there, and I hated myself because I knew from the moment I opened up that door, I was just going to mumble my same order for my same Diet Pepsi and walk my bike home on this walk of shame and taste defeat. It tastes like Diet Pepsi. And I realized that, when I said, okay, fortune favors the bold but doesn't favor the weak, that kind of paints fortune out as a bully, right? Like a dick. But it's not the case, because we are oftentimes, as people, presented with branching points, crossroads, wherein bravery or cowardice is a choice we make. And when you choose to be brave, when you choose to beat back that fear and take a risk, you're not guaranteed success. You're not guaranteed fortune's favor. But when you're cowardly, you're guaranteed you're out of the running. And so there is no end to that particular subsection of this story. I didn't do anything. I tasted defeat. I walked on. The next year I resolved I shall not be that person any longer. Another crush, because it's high school. That's how it works. There was a girl, and this time I was actually talking to her, and she was flirting back with me, and there you go, and her name was Rose, and I figured, okay, this is it. This is where I redeem myself for this whole sort of thing that was going on in my head. This will not be that same story again, because this is a real deal. We're talking. And so it comes time, and I stand at that crossroads. There's a moment where obviously the conversation sort of lulls, and I'm supposed to ask her something. I just kind of slink away. But I figure in my head, in a rationalization fashion, no, I need a grand gesture. It's not enough to just say, hey, I'm bigger. I'm Fortune's favored son. I need something big. I need a story. I was an asshole and a coward, and I stress a coward. What I did was I deferred that moment by a plan and a plot that I thought would just be, cooler. I was in an AP art class, and they kind of gave everybody in the AP art classes free range. Do art. So we did. And I took a piece of parchment paper, and I taught myself a sort of faux calligraphy. And her name was Rose, so I drew a picture of a rose and I kind of distressed it like an old map, and I wrote a little section of a poem I cribbed both from George Gordon, Lord Byron, and the movie Dead Poets Society, but I figured she probably didn't see it. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and in her eyes. And I can repeat it to you because I made like 12 versions of this. No, it's not right. It's not right. To delay that moment. My plan was this. I would hide this in her locker. She would find it, and there would be a period of wonder. Who is this mystery man, right? Like Grease 2, I would be the cool rider. And that was the plan. And I found out where her locker was. And she's always at her locker. So I conspired to be there early in the morning. And I go there, and as it turns out, she was there early in the morning, but she was like down a hallway. It was like from, a movie where I'm like, I gotta go, boom, get it in the locker, and then hide behind a corner. And I actually saw that she opened, what's this? I'm like, okay, now I know she has this note. Now the waiting period begins. 3 days, that was what I put it at, like to allow the tension to build. And then I would reveal myself. I am the Maxwell Caulfield Cool Rider. Come. You will be my girl for all seasons. Every last one of you sons of bitches watch Grease too. Oh, my God. But in those 3 intervening days, the creeping terror of doubt and fear sort of worked in, like, this is what a stalker does. This is not a good thing to do. What if the reaction is, oh, you? And that paralyzed me. And as I say, all these were crushes, and they hurt and they pushed. And back then, I would tell you I'm in love, but honestly, I was in high school. I didn't know what that meant. And once again, this part of the story, the second part, there's no resolution. There's no story. There's a beginning and a middle, but there's no end. It's kind of the inverse of the underwear pants gnomes. Couple years pass, and I've had actual relationships in the intervening years. I've grown up a little bit, but still, somewhere within me, and somewhere within all of us, I believe, at each instance in the timeline, that piece of ourselves that we are there exists within us still, and we are a collection of those moments, and we sort of define ourselves by the aggregation of them, of those branching points, of those crossroads. What decision did you make? Did you be bold? Did you be were you a coward? And there were times, I'm telling you a story here, but there were times I was bold, there were times I was brave, but, those cowardly moments, sort of, you collect them and look at them a lot more. So this is into college. I decide I'm going to be uncharacteristically not like myself and just do something. I'm going to go be in a play. There was playbills up for auditions for a Shakespeare play. It was Midsummer Night's Dream, and I thought, this should just be an exercise for me to beat back the fear of going and doing it. I don't expect to be in it. This is just something that when I first looked, I'm like, ugh, I don't know if I could do that. So I said, well, you should do that then. So I go, and I audition. And as it turns out, pretty good. Or I looked the part or something. The guy kept on reading me over and over again. And when I was first there, this wasn't a pretty girl. This was a beautiful woman who was there. And I don't tell you this to say, oh, then the crush. No. I didn't even think anything of it because this is a one-off. I'm not even going to come back. I'm not going to get into this play. This is just a sort of exercise in doing something that I kind of wanted to do but then felt scared about, so I better goddamn well do it. And the first time there, I didn't even speak to her. I just sort of noticed because she's so beautiful that it's not even like where you're oh, I'm in love. It's just an objective fact. Like, whoa, look at that. It's like, you're just seeing a unicorn. Like you would go, hey, look, a unicorn. Then I get called back because the guy liked my performance as Lysander. And the callbacks are a little more intimate in a different scenario. It's actually something sort of like this, where people are out sitting in these rows. And I sit down, I look, and there's that woman. And once again, honestly, I wasn't thinking of love and romance necessarily, because we were at a play, and I didn't know if she would get cast or if I would get cast. Just making conversation, and wow, I'm gonna drop a lot of geeky references here. There is in the Muppet movie. There's a moment at which Hook-beaked Gonzo reveals that he is not just a crazy chicken lover, but also he has the sort of soul of a poet. When he sings this song in the desert that kind of stops you, and you're like, ooh, I feel something here, the Muppet movie. And the line he says is this. He sings, "There's not a word yet for old friends who just met." Wow. That's kind of a perfect sentiment, right? We've all been there. That's where I was sitting talking with this woman. We were just clicking in a way that I realized, like, I don't know you, but I know you. And wow, that's sort of cool. A few days pass. I go and I say to him, and I begin to second guess everything as is my bent to do. And by the time the casting is posted, I've convinced myself that it's all a grand illusion, and I've never been a part of plays or doing things like that. In any case, I'm sure I'm setting myself up for a fall if I just think that I'm going to be in this thing. So I go and I look at the posted board there, and she's there. And she says, "Hey, I got in the play. Congratulations. Who are you?" Right here, look, Jolene Hay. To Tanya. I said, "Am I there? What's your name?" Josh Dobbin. "You're in the play, Josh Dobbin. You are Lysander. We're going to get to know each other. That's pretty cool. All right, congratulations. And we start to walk the campus, and we're just talking, and everything up to this point in my life, every moment up to this point in my life has been preamble and precursor, because I didn't know what the future would bring necessarily. I only knew as I walked and talked with this woman that I needed to know her in some capacity because I knew her. And once again, it sounds sort of creepy and stalkerish. It's not that. I knew her, right? And she knew me. We were laughing and joking, and instantly, as if we had been friends forever. And as we're walking, suddenly the intimacy of the conversation became apparent, I think, perhaps to both of us, that it's weird that we're so intimate so quickly. And at that moment, usually people kind of break off when they see themselves. It's like that whole thing about dancing. If you have to walk up and then make the active choice to begin dancing, you shouldn't be dancing. But when you notice, oh, hey, we're dancing, that's when you stop, right? So she stops for a moment and she goes, "Well, I got to go this way." And I look down and I swear to Christ, as a Jew, I swear, I'm standing at an actual crossroads. She's going this way, and my schedule and classes have me going the other way. And I know in that moment, if I tell her the truth and say, "Well, I'm going this way," because it's the truth, there's no shame in saying it. But I know in that moment, if I begin to make that choice and go that way, I will be making the beginning of a series of choices at which those sorts of choices will become easier and easier, and I'll be able to fritter away everything. And something, somewhere in myself said, "Dude, fortune favors the bold. Fuck no, you're not going that way." And I said, "You're going that way? So am I. Let's walk together. Let's talk." That was 1993. It is 2013. So my math is correct. It's 20 years ago. And that one moment, that one choice, that one metaphorical and actual physical crossroads and that choice to be bold and brave and to follow something that I felt is responsible for every single moment of happiness, of joy, and of love that I have experienced and will experience. I drove here today with that woman after dropping off our two children at my mom's house so I could stand here and tell you the story.